Okay, we're looking at the basic things we need to know in photosynthesis. We'll start off with the chemical equation. We need to have 6 molecules of carbon dioxide. We need to have 6 molecules of water, and they'll combine together to form one big molecule of glucose, which is C6H12O6. And we have 6 waste molecules of oxygen. See, that's a terribly important chemical formula to remember. This won't happen unless we have light and chlorophyll present. Now let's look at where the chlorophyll is located. Chlorophyll is located inside structures called chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are found in plant cells. So you need to be able to draw a picture of a chloroplast. Okay. Inside the chloroplast there are structures called grana, and the grana contain the chlorophyll. So those are grana that I'm labeling there. Okay. So this is a chloroplast. This structure here is a grana. And inside the grana you have the green chlorophyll. This liquid part here is called the stroma. This is important because there are different chemical reactions that happen in the grana and different reactions that happen in the stroma. Now we're going to look at how light affects photosynthesis, how light controls photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is divided into 2 stages. This is just to make it easier to understand. We have the light stage, which is called the light dependent stage, and obviously that needs light to happen. And we have the dark stage. The dark stage is called the light independent stage. Okay, so we call it the light stage and the dark stage. Now we're going to look at the light stage in a little bit more detail. Okay. Okay, so to look at the light stage. Okay, we're going to start with a molecule of chlorophyll. Okay, there's a chlorophyll molecule. Light hits the molecule of chlorophyll. When that happens, molecules inside here start to vibrate and they produce energized electrons. These energized electrons leave at great speed. The path is controlled by a molecule which is known as an electron acceptor. So the electrons are picked up and controlled by an electron acceptor. Okay, we don't need to know the name of this electron acceptor. The electron acceptor passes the electrons, the energized electrons, onto a carrier system. There's actually 3 separate molecules in the carrier system, but we're just going to call it a carrier system. So the electrons travel along this carrier system, and as they do so they lose energy, and energy can't be created or destroyed, so it's converted to another form. The energy is used to form molecules of ATP. ATP is this energy-rich molecule. What's ATP made from? ATP is made from smaller, low-energy molecules, ADP and P. So that's the way, one way of drawing that. ATP is made from ADP and P. After the electrons have passed through the carrier system, many of the electrons return to chlorophyll. So these are low energy electrons down here, and they return to chlorophyll. This is quite a simple pathway. So the electrons leave chlorophyll, pass from an electron acceptor to a carrier system, ATP is made, and they return to chlorophyll. This is called pathway 1. It's the short pathway, or pathway 1. Now some of the electrons go on a longer journey, and that's what we're going to look at next. We're going to look at pathway 2. Okay. Again, this is our chlorophyll molecule. Light shining on the chlorophyll, and like before, an energized electron is released. So I'll draw my energized electron coming down here. Now, as we said, some of those electrons are passed on to an acceptor and passed on to a carrier system, and ATP is made. Now we still have the electron acceptor here. And some of those electrons are actually passed on to a molecule called NADP. Okay, NADP gains an electron and becomes negative. And in chemistry, we say that NADP is reduced. So the NADP becomes negative. So we can draw that like that. NADP becomes NADP negative. So we can see now some of the electrons are actually trapped in a molecule called NADP, making it negative. Okay, so we're wondering what happens to these. In order to understand what happens to these, we're actually going to have to look at another chemical process that's going on. This is called photolysis. Photolysis is the splitting of a water molecule. So this is my water molecule here. When light shines on a water molecule, it is split. It is split into oxygen. Okay, that's the O2 up there. It's split into electrons, which is the E. These are energized electrons. And it's split into protons, H+. Okay. So the splitting of water is important. Light shines on a water molecule and splits it into O2, electrons, and H+. Now let's look at what happens to the H+. The H+ start to gather. Lots and lots of H+ or protons are produced. Okay, so I'll draw a number of them here. And this is referred to as a pool of protons, or a proton pool. Now down here I've drawn a NADP-, which has a negative charge. It's been reduced as NADP-. And here we have lots of positive charges. So these positive charges are attracted towards the negative of the NADP-. And that, some of them combined with NADP to form a molecule of NADPH. Okay. NADPH is a molecule that will be used in the dark stage. So this is one of the main products of the light stage, NADPH. Another product of the light stage, I have it up here, is oxygen. Okay, and remember from this picture, we have some ATP is made. ATP is also made in this stage by this electron. The electron travels back to chlorophyll, okay, and along the way it's going to pass through a carrier system. The electron passes through a carrier system and then back to chlorophyll. On its way through the carrier system, ATP is made. So we can draw it out here. This is the ATP being made. And what's ATP made from? It's made from two smaller molecules, ADP and P. So they are used to make ATP. So ATP is another of the product. So it's important that we focus on what are the three products in the light phase. We have ATP is here, oxygen is here, and NADPH is here. So common questions are, what is water split into? Water is split into oxygen, electrons, and protons. What happens to each of these? Oxygen is released to the atmosphere. So some of the oxygen is released to the atmosphere. Okay, some of the oxygen may be used in respiration. So there's two possibilities, used in respiration. Okay, so that's what happens to the oxygen. What happens to the electrons? We can see it passes along a carrier system to chlorophyll. So this is my chlorophyll molecule here. And what happens to the protons? The protons build up in a proton pool. This little storage area is known as a proton pool. It's just a collection of protons rather than a particular area. Okay, so you have the three products of the splitting of water to know about, and the splitting of water is called photolysis. Okay, photo means light and lysis means split. So light can split water. Okay, now we're moving on to, now we look at the dark stage. Okay, the dark stage needs to make glucose. So glucose is made in the dark stage. So I can write that here. Okay, this is the end product of the dark stage. In order to make glucose, we need to have carbon dioxide. Okay, and we need to have lots of protons. Okay, we need to have protons. So the H's and the CO2 will together make glucose. In order for this to happen, we need to have energy. Energy is available here in the form of this high energy molecule called ATP. Now all of this happens in a cycle of reactions. So that's often drawn like this. The cycle of reactions is called the Calvin cycle. So in the Calvin cycle, carbon dioxide comes in. Okay, ATP is used up, and when I say ATP is used up, that's a way of drawing that. And when ATP is used up, it's converted into ADP plus P. And protons are added. Okay, so where are protons? Where do the protons come from? The protons come from a molecule called NADPH, which is carrying protons. So we have NADPH, which gives up its proton and becomes NADP. Okay, so NADP will now head back to the light stage to pick up some more protons. ADP and P will now head back to the light stage to be re-energized by an energized electron produced from chlorophyll in the light stage. The end product here of the Calvin cycle is glucose. This glucose can be used immediately in respiration. Okay, so some parts of the cell will need to have glucose for energy, so used in respiration. Some of the glucose can be converted into starch for storage for use later on, and some of the glucose could be converted into sucrose if it needs to be transported somewhere else in the plant.